Today I will talk about, do you hear, is everyone hearing me? Okay. About the decoration programs in the first half of the 17th century, and tomorrow I will talk about the cultural exchange between the northern and the southern Netherlands, very much related to that project about which Professor Genova talked. To say or to explain a bit what I understand under an iconographic program. An iconographic program is in fact a kind of scheme of thematically related images. Generally they are devised by someone with scholarly interests or humanistic interests. And in the 17th century, more and more they became popular, certainly as a decoration for royal palaces and public buildings. And it's about those palaces and buildings that we will talk today. Today we will focus on three buildings or collections in particular. The first is the so-called Medici series, developed or conceived for the Luxembourg Palace in Paris between 1622 and 25, and this series is today in its entirety in the Musée du Louvre in Paris, so it still exists. The second one is in London, also still in situ, which is very exceptional. It's a series made for Whitehall ceiling and banqueting house. And the third is also in situ. It is made for the Oranjezaal, which is, well, I'll explain what it is, a particular room in a palace near The Hague. First I will explain why those three programs. The reason is that they are all made around the same time. The moment of creation is the first half of the 17th century. They are all made during the 30 Years' War. And as you might know, the 30 Years' War was really a series of wars that were fought in Central Europe essentially, and which had, of course, a very great impact on politics, on ideas, on everything. The destination they have is also similar. They are all made for semi-public rooms in royal or pseudo-royal palaces. And the artist is, for two of them, Rubens, and for the third one, artists who are related to Rubens or in one or another way, or who are indebted to Rubens, who have made it. Another thing they have in common is that the iconography, they are all dealing with political issues that are translated in allegories. Yes? And the main question we will deal with today is what was now the function and the meaning of those decorations? They were very popular, and why did people really want those programs? Well, why did they want to have those programs in their palaces? Why was it so important for them? Why did they spend so much money to have those enormous, huge projects in their palaces? Here she is, Marie de Medici, in a portrait made by Rubens, and here is her palace, as you can see it, and it's still there today in Paris. What did she do? Well, the palace was made, and she also wanted to have it decorated. And what did she do? She contacted Rubens to make the decoration of the two wings, the left one and the right one, to decorate it with paintings. In fact, she commissioned him to make two large series. One series for the right wing, which should depict the life of herself, and the other wing should be filled with images devoted to the life of her husband, to Henry IV. Unfortunately, the last series that dedicated to her man was never completed, so we can skip that already. One question we should ask us is, why did she contact Rubens? She was in France, and there were quite a lot of good artists in France, and she contacted Rubens. Marie de Medici, she wanted to be sure that she had an artist who would work for her, who was able to immortalize her life in paint. And as we will see later, this was a demanding task for a painter for several reasons. So she was confident that Rubens could do this. And secondly, well, Rubens had established himself at that moment already, so it was 1620s, had established himself already as an exceptional painter, and he had also the advantage of sustaining very good contacts with a lot of important people of the time. All over Europe, and with a lot of courts. He had worked in Italy, he had contacts with the Gonzaga family and the Medicis, who were, of course, family of Mary de' Medici. So that is a bit, those are possible reasons why she contacted Rubens. But finally, he found a fantastic solution to deal with it. He decided not to depict the events very literally as they happened. And what did he do, therefore? He turned to mythological creatures, to personifications, allegories of virtues and vices, to veil in a way that often unheroic life of Marie de' Medicis. And in a way, this ambiguity of those figures was essentially used to depict Mary in a positive light, more positive than in fact she was in reality. So finally he decided to, he chose an allegorical approach and not a historical one. Another thing, what we said already, what was very, very challenging was the technical aspect, and how could he deal now with it? Well, he had this large studio. We know that in 1610, when Rubens just came back from Italy, that he had already a studio, well, that he had to refuse really a lot of artists who wanted to come and learn with him or work with him. That he said at a certain moment in a letter in 1610, he said, I had to refuse already 100 artists who want to work with me. So this is telling, because it says that he was very popular and that he had a very large studio. We don't know precisely how many artists worked with him, but he was very well surrounded, let's say. And he had a very interesting method of dealing with that. He, in his creative process, he made use of the oil sketch. And these are oil sketches. And what is the advantage of it? Not only that it functions as a modello for the commissioner, but also for himself, it was very useful in the studio, because these are originally by Rubens. So if you want to see original Rubens work, it's very interesting to have a look at drawings, of course, and also these oil sketches, because you can be sure that all oil sketches are made by Rubens himself. For the larger paintings, a lot of them are made by himself, but often there is also studio hands in it. So he made these, and he asked his artists in the studio to to help him to develop it on the large scale. So the oil sketch was a way to delegate work, let's say, to ask also, because they had a modello, the artists, and they could look at this and then work on the basis of this to develop the large painting. But as you have heard before, he had to make the figures for this specific commission. Another example is this, to show you how he proceeded also with the allegories. You see here, it's again dealing with, you see, he deals also always with the nice things. It's again about the wedding. They didn't meet at that moment. Here they meet for the first time. It's in Lyon that Marie de' Medici and her future husband meet for the first time in life. And you see they are represented. Do you recognize the gods? And do you know the goddess as which Marie de' Medici is represented? Do you know her? The iconography? Do you have an idea? No? Well, the peacock and the chariot are the symbols of Juno. She is, the main goddess of all the mythological gods. And the man, he is Jupiter. He is the head of all gods. So they were a couple. And Rubens depicted them as such here, as a couple, but as Marie de' Medici and her husband. You see also a rainbow. This is referring to concord of marriage, symbolically used. He also made a pun on the name of the city. So they saw each other in Lyon, in French. Lyon is lion, and therefore he depicted there those two lions and the chariot, and the lady on the chariot is the personification of Lyon. She is the city, in fact. So now you see a bit how he tried to deal with the life of Marie de Medici in an allegorical way. To a certain extent, even more exceptional was the next series Rubens made. And that was a series made for banqueting hall. Why? Since it is the only scheme of decoration made by Rubens, and he made several, which is still in situ. So it's still in the place where it was made for. And there he had other challenges about which I will tell you. So banqueting hall was made for another foreign patron. So you see that Rubens was really active not only in the Netherlands but in all over Europe. He was a demanded artist by all those royals. And of course you can imagine that if one royal had such a decoration scheme, another royal wanted it too. They looked at each other. It's very human, I think, and it's still today that we do that, but it was also the case in those days that people compared to each other, and certainly royals, they wanted to be, all at the same level to impress each other. James I. So here again we see that same mixture of classical gods and heroes and also personifications of virtues and vices surrounding the figure of the king. Many of the characters are very familiar. You have Minerva, you have Hercules, you have plenty. So for the people who came there, probably for us it's maybe not so easy to immediately understand, but you should imagine that for 17th century people it was part of their vocabulary. As you have a visual vocabulary today, they had also their own vocabulary, so they understood quite easily the message. It should also have that purpose, as it was easily to understand by 17th century people. So when we come back to the initial question, what is the function and meaning of those allegorical programs, I hope that you have a little idea now why those rulers, those royals in entire Europe were so keen on having those huge schemes, huge pictorial programs in their palaces. They wanted, themselves or their deceased forefathers to be glorified in effect on the level of gods. The earthly ruler wanted to be glorified as a god, as a pagan god, but also as a religious god. We see that the first steps in those programs, in those huge programs, were made in England and in France. In a way, England was first, but in the ideas, but in the execution, it was Marie de Medici who was the first. And you see that after that, all the royals wanted to have such schemes to be represented. We see also an important influence of Italian examples, of course, as it is always the case in Baroque and in the art. Even in the 17th century, it's not only in the 16th century, but also still in the 17th century, Italy remains an important point of reference for the artist. And it's clear that there was a kind of competition between those rulers. What is also, I think, very clear is that the iconography was very strictly supervised. Since it was crucial for the image of the royal houses, how they were represented. It was a crucial